Speed endurance, or lack of, can be the one thing that stops us from reaching our goals when it comes to running. Therefore, the ability to work on the extension of speed during our training is absolutely vital. This can be the difference between us hitting our goals and falling just short. What is up guys, Andy Forrest, Team Runner here. Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking all about how you guys can work on your speed endurance. So working on speed endurance, or the extension of speed during marathon training for me in particular, but in all sorts of training, is absolutely vital to be able to hit your goals that you have for your races. As I'm currently less than 6 weeks away from my marathon, speed endurance is top of my priority list right now. And today what I want to do is go through with you and talk about how you guys can work on your speed endurance, because ultimately we all have goals where that ultimate 10k time that we have, that 10k pace, we'd love to be able to extrapolate that and make that become our half marathon pace, and maybe in dreamland one day make that become our marathon pace. These are all goals we have, but we can all work towards them. Hopefully by me sharing what I'm about to share today, you guys can work on your speed endurance too, and hopefully work towards those goals as well. If you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and we'll dive right in. So tip number one is going to be all about making sure you have that aerobic base laid, that aerobic foundation ready before you lay this speed endurance stuff on top. Ultimately what it is effectively like building a house and laying the bricks without using cement. We all hear the laying the foundation thing, but I also like to think of it as trying to lay bricks without using cement to bind the bricks together, because ultimately the house will just fall down. The cement that binds everything together is that aerobic work. It knots it all in, it weaves everything together, and it basically is the key to success. Having this aerobic work done and dusted before you approach speed work is absolutely vital. Let me give you a couple of examples of training blocks I've done so you can see and relate it to how you guys train as well. In the past I've done 16-week training blocks where I've done 4 weeks of base work, easy, moderate tempo runs, 4 weeks of speed work, 200 meter, 400 meter, 600 meter, 800 meter repeats, so shorter, sharper intervals, and then 6 weeks of solid speed endurance work. Before then, obviously, I've got that 8 weeks worth of work with those two sections combined before approaching the 6 weeks speed endurance, and then a 2-week taper. More recently, I'm doing training blocks where I'm just focused around a specific goal, whether that's a 10k training block, half marathon or marathon. But what that means is I have a goal pace in mind and I'm training in and around that goal pace. In the beginning, the pace range is a lot wider. I'm training with more scope and more freedom. But as I get towards a marathon, I tighten those paces up and work a lot closer in and around marathon pace to work on that speed endurance. Again, as you see before the speed endurance stuff, I'm working and laying some foundations there ready to put this speed endurance stuff down. So tip number two is going to be all about putting in some half marathon and marathon specific interval work into your training. Now you do obviously want to keep that shorter, sharper speed work in there, but as a second workout of the week, if you're a runner that incorporates 2 workouts a week, we're going to be certainly looking to extend those intervals and work at a more controlled effort. Still a fast effort, but a controlled, longer, drawn out effort to work on that speed endurance. So I'm reaching out here to the people that are comfortable with 5Ks and 10Ks and maybe looking to, or have run their first couple of half marathons and maybe looking to reach out to their first marathon, or you haven't run your first half marathon yet and you're wondering how you can go from a 10k up to a half marathon. So things like if you're a time-based runner, if you're looking at 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute intervals, and that's your comfort zone, that's what you do, and those are really, really hard. Likewise with track runners or people that run on distance, you're like 200, 400, 600, 800 meter repeat runner. You need to extend that. That's where we need to work on this speed extension. So the controlled element comes in where we might want to dial that effort and intensity back and work closer in and around goal race pace, but we're looking to extend those reps. If you're a time-based runner, you might want to look in the range of 8 to 12 minute repetitions. Obviously start at the smaller end and work up as you go through to get used to that. But if you did something like 2 by 8 minutes to start with, and then maybe by the end of your training block you're going to aim to hit 3 by 10 minutes. That will be a great progression from the smaller intervals to the longer intervals. Likewise with distance, you might want to try some kilometer repeats, you might want to try some mile repeats, and ultimately 2 mile repeats are my personal bread and butter when it comes to half marathon training. So things like 2x2 mile repeats would be great. 3x2 mile repeats is absolutely brilliant. And when you get to that point and you feel you can give that one a go, that is an absolutely epic workout. So it's all about extending those intervals, making them a bit longer, controlling the pace, but of course making them longer so that we can extend that speed. And tip number 3 is going to be all about the long run, how we can extend it and what we can do within the long run, like workouts that's going to help our speed endurance. So ultimately, the longer we can long run, the better. It's going to be better for our aerobic fitness. Our bodies are going to get used to it. That's going to allow the rest of the runs in the following weeks to come to feel a little bit easier and hopefully bring our fitness levels up a notch every so often. So in terms of long runs, I'm going to throw out some examples here, and then you can hopefully work that into how you currently are with your long runs and see what you can do with your upcoming training block. So just as an example, if you love to run 60 minutes for your long run, 75 minutes or even 90 minutes, let's use that range because that's quite a good range. You might want to consider over your next training block trying to extend that to an extra 15 minutes over the course of a training block. So not straight away, but you might, for example, want to go, right, this week I'm going to try and run, if I'm a 60-minute run, I'm going to try and run 63 or 64 minutes, and then I'm going to hold that for 2 weeks, and then I might do like 67 or 68 minutes. I know people might like to round it up, but I feel when it comes to a long run, sometimes for some level of runners, 5-minute chunks can be a little bit too much. If you feel confident in your ability, by all means, go for 5-minute chunks. But if you want to just slowly work on extending it, time on feet is really, really key here. I'm not particularly worried when I talk to people about distance and pace and stuff. It's all about that time on feet and getting your body used to being out there and working for longer. So that slow extension of the long run is great. And then obviously starting to do some long run workouts, that's going to be key. That could be things like just throwing in some pace changes, some surges, whenever you feel like you can, completely sporadic like a fartlek. That could be a progression run. That could be throwing in some tempo work. That could be first half easy, second half moderate or a little bit faster. The choice is yours, and I've done plenty of videos on long run workouts, so I'm not going to cover all of those now, but ultimately if you want to become better at running for longer, faster paces, that long run does have to just creep up gradually, and we have to get a little bit more specificity in there to allow your body to start adapting and getting used to those pace changes. And the fourth tip that I want to share with you guys is all about shortening that rest on your interval work. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of how you can incorporate in this, because there are a couple of ways that I've found that are really useful, and I feel it's been massively beneficial to me over the last 12 to 18 months. Now ultimately what we're doing by shortening the rest is we're keeping our heart rate higher for longer, meaning our body is working harder for longer, meaning that our body is getting used to that a higher intensity of work, and ultimately working on that speed endurance. But we need to do it safely and we need to do it sensibly. So there are 2 ways that you can do this, 2 ways that I've been doing it. Let me explain. Let's take 3-minute intervals, for example, because this is just a really easy way for me to explain it. You do 3-minute intervals, 8 by 3 minutes. Now, traditionally, or you might do something like a 2-minute or a 3-minute rest, so your rest is almost or equal to what the distance is that you're running, and you might take that as a walk or a light jog. What that's doing with, let's plot a heart rate graph here, you might be going up and down because you're working really, really hard on those intervals, and then you're coming right back down because you're giving your heart rate a chance to come back down the other side. And that's a typical graph that you'd like to see when you're doing VO2 max workout, where you're really pushing top end but giving your body a chance to recover so you can go again and just kind of work on that VO2 max stuff. We want the graph to be a lot more like that, so there's less ups and downs and there's more of a controlled curve to it. And the 2 ways you can do this is, number 1, incorporate a float, or number 2, really, really shorten the rest so you don't have a chance for your heart rate to come down. I quite like both options really. So let's say we're doing 3-minute repeats. You can do a 1-minute or a 90-second recovery, and you might want to float those recoveries. And what do I mean by float? We're talking about a steady pace recovery. And what this is going to do is it's going to make you control your reps. You're not going to go all out on your reps. You're going to take the edge off your reps, and you're going to be going from gear 4 to gear 2 if we're talking about cars here. So you're not quite in 5th gear working really, really hard, but then also when we come to our floats, we're not going right back to an easy shuffle jog. we're concentrating on holding good form and holding a relatively easy to steady pace. So the pace range will be a lot more like that. And the other alternative is something that I'm doing right now during my marathon training is my rests on my 3-minute repetitions are like 45 seconds. And I am doing a light jog, but the rest period is so short, it doesn't allow my heart rate to come right back down. And again, I'm just controlling those reps, because if I go all out, there's no way I can recover and go again in time to run a sensible 3-minute rep. So there's a couple of ways that you guys can work on shortening those rests. And the fifth and final tip that I want to give you guys is to work on those longer sustained efforts, longer sustained tempo runs and longer sustained marathon paced efforts. Because ultimately what we're doing here is we are getting our body used to running at a specific pace, holding that heart rate at a controlled level, running at a controlled pace for a longer period of time. So obviously we do things like when we're marathon training or half marathon training, we're doing these intervals and we're giving our bodies rests at times when we're trying to work on getting up to and in and around goal pace. But there comes a point towards the end of a training block, especially for me, where I want to hold some sustained efforts. Now, the 2 training blocks that I've had massive success with when it comes to running marathons, the only 2 marathons that I feel I've run really, really well, I've incorporated proper long tempo runs and marathon pace efforts in the build-up. I just find personally what it does is it just gets my body and mind used to what pace I'm about to run, and it builds confidence. Obviously, naturally over time, what we want to see with training is our heart rates coming down for certain paces. So when we start on week 1, a pace might be a certain heart rate, but when we come to the end of the training block, we would hope that pace is a little bit less strenuous and our heart rate is a little bit lower. That's the goal as we get fitter, to bring those heart rates down relative to what they were at the start. And I feel these marathon pace efforts and these longer sustained hour tempo runs, 40-minute tempo runs, are a real key here to achieving that. Not only does it physically get the body used to working harder for longer, sort of start to get that suffering as you get towards the end and you're working on sustaining that effort, but also mentally it hardens you up because you're working for a long period of time. Just this week actually, I did 15 miles at marathon pace. Mentally, physically it was fine, mentally it was a challenge, and that's what I know I needed to get over that hurdle in preparation for my marathon. I remember getting over those hurdles in those previous 2 training blocks and feeling really ready and fresh to go on race day, and I highly recommend you guys consider them too. So there we go, from working on our aerobic base all the way up to those longer tempo runs and marathon pace efforts and everything in between. Hopefully the points I've covered today will help you guys work on your speed endurance in your upcoming training blocks. Hopefully you can take some bits and pieces away, sprinkle them into your training and become stronger and faster runners over those longer distances. It's something that I've strived for such a long period of time, to get better at longer distances, and I finally feel like I'm slowly making some headway over the half marathon and marathon. And if I can do anything, it's to share some tips and tricks with you guys that might be able to help you guys be in a similar position as well. And of course, if you have found that something has really worked for you over the years, please do drop it in the comments below. Please share, whether it's a workout, whether it's a style of training. I'd love to hear, everyone else would love to hear, and the comment section can become a really useful place for people to go and read. That's it from me today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Until then.